And then Devon, he just left that empty chair on the line. What kind of foolishness are y'all running tonight? Okay, let me do my thing. Just let me do my thing. Un momento, please. I picked the right song. Here we go, because you know it's all about the music for me. Okay. Hey. Okay. I don't know if you guys remember this. It's by Portrait, and it's called "Here We Go Again." I don't own the rights to this music. Hey, Crib community! Welcome back. Welcome back, Crib community. It is so good to see you again. Welcome back for season 4. Season 4. Can you believe it? Wait. I gotta get ready for the chorus. Friends of mine. Hey. Okay. The chorus is really good though. Okay, ready? Here we go. Here we go. Going to the same thing. Back for season 4. Okay, I thought it was spinning. I think you guys picking up what I'm putting down. So I just, I'm always about the right entry song. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me start it again. Crib community, welcome back. Welcome back, Crib community, welcome back. When you come on in the room and hit share. Let folks know we are back in full effect. 30 at 8:30 season 4. I cannot believe it's been 4 seasons, and thank you so much for continuing to watch and join us. 4 seasons and we're still here. We're still here. That's good news. That's good news. For those of you who are new to the Crib community, 3830 is an Instagram live show where every Wednesday night for 30 minutes, we hold the space. Hold the space for just 30 minutes for the purpose of having candid conversations from both our head and our heart space about the impact of structural inequities, homicide, and other forms of violent traumatic injury that disproportionately impact some of our most vulnerable. Tonight, we are launching our 4th season entitled From the Front Lines, with the intention to bring to the forefront the work of community members, those frontline workers who do the passionate, heavy lifting of making our tomorrows better than today. This season, you will hear from educators, community activists, social workers, public health practitioners, and artists about the ways in which they center the voices of those that they're dedicated to serving from the front lines, from neighborhoods in both Canada and in the US. Tonight, in our episode entitled From Whom the Bell Tolls, the impact of homicide on educators and students, you will hear from 2 amazing individuals who have dedicated their lives to implementing violence prevention and intervention strategies in the hopes of ensuring that all of our youth are provided with just resources and services, allowing them to maximize their greatest potential. Let's get started, y'all, shall we? All right. I have some bios to read. Don't start yet, folks. Don't start yet. First up, Brother Devon Jones is a researcher, community leader, and youth advocate with over 2 decades, y'all, 2 decades of experience as an educator in the Toronto District School Board. His work has been highlighted in the Toronto Star, National Post, and the CBC. In 2007, he established the Youth Association for Academics, Athletics, and Character Education. Is it YAAACE or YAAACE?
YAAACE.
YAAACE. YAAACE. To provide children and youth who experience violence in its many forms, homicide and firearm injury, anti-Black racism, and structural inequities, et cetera, to provide them with opportunities to engage in a year-round academic, athletic, recreational, technological, and art-focused activities. I want to sign up. Anyway, his commitment to preserving and nurturing the lives of young people is unparalleled. Next up, Tamasha Grant. Sister Tamasha Grant is a dynamic and collaborative mother of two kings with a strong sense of advocacy and social justice. That is very true. I sensed that from the first time I met her. Okay, I digress. I'm supposed to read the bio. Tamasha Grant brings 20 plus years experience in community development and violence prevention space. From her role as a change agent working within the gray areas to her uncanny ability to identify risk, Tamasha is the lead consultant for Nubian Rising Consulting Services, which supports institutions, nonprofit, and grassroots. I just want you to see all the love in the room. Nonprofit and grassroots organizations develop community safety and well-being strategies and navigate challenges of anti-Black racism and oppression while strengthening their infrastructure to support Toronto's most vulnerable communities. She also holds degrees in psychology and early childhood education and serves as chair on the board of directors for Jane Finch Community Tennis Association. All right now, Crib community, give our guest for the first episode of season 4 a warm Crib welcome like I know you know how. Woo, woo, woo. Okay, too much? Okay, all right. Welcome y'all to 30 at 8:30. Tamasha's cracking up. Devon does not know what to do with me. I mean, this is me after dark. I'm just saying. But I want to start off with some questions, it's a question that we ask all of our guests just to kind of get to know you a little bit more. What drew you both to this work? And I'm not sure who wants to go first. What drew you both to this work?
Ladies first, Tamasha first.
Ladies first, he said. Ladies
Tamasha
first,
first.
Tamasha.
I knew he was going to do that. For me, I would say 3 things. And those 3 things are usually what people observe as the days of Kwanzaa. So one is Nia. And it would say it's purpose. For me, I've never really seen this as work. But more my purpose. I wasn't drawn to it, but planted exactly where I needed to be. From a really young age, I was helping people, educating others is what I did best. And although I abandoned the path of an educator in an academic sense, so I would have been right there with you in TDSB, Devon, I took a detour. But the title itself manifested in different ways. So it's always been a purpose for me.
How about that?
The second reason would really be Ubuntu. I am what I am because we all are. Again, for me, it's always a humanity first perspective. How can I be good when those I live amongst, play amongst, work amongst are not good? I need to put back into community. And then not most importantly, but one of the important ones is the principle of self-determination. So Kuji Kajula, it's that labor of love that's supporting community to build, to heal, and to define and name themselves. So that we find our inner strength to start tearing down a lot of the stigma that's been put upon us. So that I find is all wrapped up in my purpose. So that's what brought me to this sort of work. And then if I want to add a little tidbit, kind of selfish, like I said, with my 2 kings, got to make sure we're planting the seeds to make sure that the generations next are not necessarily enduring the same pieces. So trying to make it better for them.
I felt that intro and your response from my head to my toes, and it's so grounding and centering. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ashe, Ashe. Devon?
Yeah, for me it was service. I was always fortunate every step of the way as a young man in life to have people that have poured into me. And I always felt the need to reciprocate that, that level of commitment that folks had extended to me at critical junctures in my life. So I was grew up in a rough community, didn't really have access to much. And as I said, every step of the way, someone always gave me a hand up. And I've always felt the urgent need, the urgency to pay it back, So Muhammad Ali said, service to others is the rent we pay for a time here on earth. And I genuinely believe that. So just service and just my experience as a young man and just what I experienced, when I landed as a young man, as a teacher in a community in Jane and Finch, I felt that just the abject situations I saw, and just the level of apathy, just always pushed me to be more, do more, try and think this thing out, try and frame this thing, create awareness, create advocacy, hold people accountable. Just wanted people to say to people, like, there's an impending crisis if we don't address this in an urgent way. So that drove me to the work, and just always knowing that there is an impending crisis, just based on my lived experience as a young man growing up in that culture of violence and seeing it firsthand, and knowing that if it has to be prevented as opposed to being mitigated, because if it starts, it's hard to stop. So it was just trying to get people to understand that, systems to understand that, institutions to understand that.
Wow. You are dropping gems of authenticity that are resonating with the Crip community this evening. I'm not sure if you're watching all the hearts and the waves that are going on in the community that we have here on IG. So thank you so much for that. I want to sort of piggyback on where you just landed, Devon, and talk about some of the comments in particular that you've made in the press to really talk about your why. Earlier this year, you were interviewed by CBC News in relation to inequities of access to sports in particular during the surge of the COVID-19 Omicron variant. In the interview, you highlighted the discrepancy in ways public versus private schools can navigate rules and regulations on social distancing as a result of resources. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a bit more about how this example calls attention to inequities for youth access to recreational and educational services that YAAACE focuses on.
Yeah, so I've always noticed that there was a reality of what I call this economic apartheid, and what students from poor, racialized communities, what they have access to, and it always bothered me. But COVID pretty much highlighted those disparities more so. So the group of young men I work with formed these learning pods where, as opposed to young men staying at home, they had access to a space and kind and caring adults and structure to bring them through the course of the day. But we realized that this was taking place even pre-COVID in other communities. Those kind of structures exist. Even in the public system, those structures existed in the public system, in the under the guise of what they're calling student interest programs. So you have these alternative schools within schools that was very specific to particular communities, all located downtown, all in rich affluent communities, all that was peddled by parents who had who advocated for an interest for their children. But students from, say, Jane and Finch, those schools are not located in Jane and Finch. So if I'm a parent and my child attend a school in this community, I'm pretty much confined to the structures that don't really,
Right.
that doesn't really accommodate them and their needs or their wishes, you know, or their aspirations. So COVID pretty much highlighted that, you know, those infrastructures existed. They existed in communities. They existed in more affluent communities. And we're in a situation post-COVID where we have to create, we're advocating to create those infrastructures. But in the meantime, until we do, we have removed a lot of our high performance athletes from the public system, and we've placed them in private spaces where we have to raise these draconian amount of money to cover those costs, because it makes sense. It makes sense for those young people as it relates to their process and their trajectory and what is required. So COVID highlighted that, you know, those gaps existed and those opportunities existed for rich, affluent kids, but not kids from poor, racialized communities. Kids Consulting and the research they did based on OBA pointed out that only 3% of students from neighborhoods like Jane and Finch with an income of $38,000 or less play organized sports, as opposed to 72% in more affluent communities with an income level that exceeds 100,000 a year. So you can see that if I'm a young person from this community, I don't have access
The deprivation
to structure.
of resources. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Tamasha, I see you nodding. Do you want to chime in, sis?
Yes, I would just want to add that along with the rest of those disparities, what came very clear was, again, as what Devon pointed out, was there was a clear definition of the haves and have-nots. We know that sport itself is a major contributor to not just economic, but social development and people's health and well-being. And when we are isolated and put in positions where things are continuously locked down, there has been increased mental health crisis, there has been increased depression and anxiety, even suicides and domestic violence in those communities that were restricted and bounded more than others. And, you know, in my role, even with our tennis organization, we too had to play by the rules and close down and lock down, where we knew there was other individuals in those more affluent communities who didn't close down at all, or they very much were able to bend rules in order to social distance, but in the way that they wanted to, whereas we weren't given those opportunities. So along with the access, there is other things that created. So whether it was an unintended consequence of it, like I said, the lack of mental health support that came after the somewhat recovery of COVID, right? The learning gaps due to the digital divide that also occurred. Because again, people had access to their summer schools and different things, whereas everything in the public realm was closed down. Even grant allocation, so non-for-profits, grassroots were applying for different things, were either denied grants because you were unable to do things in person, or had to somewhat try to pivot and make up for the lack of dollars in order to do things virtually. So services were slowed down. So there was a lot of different things that were, it became a complex sort of situation, which has left us in an even more dire state than when we first started before COVID, and I don't think that it's being recognized. So yes, the access to sport during COVID was limited, but I think along with it came all of those other things.
So I want to follow up on something that you said about mental health. And while we're talking about the illumination for some who were sleeping of the structural inequities, you know, YAAACE does so many things, and it's almost as if these resources that you provide also provide some sort of relief, respite, support system for youth who are disproportionately experiencing homicide and firearm related injury. And so I'm wondering if you both can comment on how YAAACE has served as a tool for youth coping with grief and loss due to homicide and community violence in particular. You know, what and who is impacted from your perspective, and how does your program in particular help?
Do you want to go ahead, Devon?
Okay, let me jump on that.
I was like, I know y'all are ready.
Right in after
I
you.
know you're ready.
Yeah,
I know you got a lot to say.
yeah, I think
It's your baby. It's your baby.
I think the big piece for me has always been the piece around the piece around prevention. You know, it's a tough place. It's a tough place to sit. You see a young person, you understand that what the environment facilitates, and you're trying as best as possible to make systems aware of this young person or these young persons. You're trying to express to that young person or this youth or this child what certain behaviors will lead to, and you're trying to help them understand, or help him understand just the inevitability of what's going to transpire. And it's tough because the systems don't see these young people. They don't even know that they exist. They don't care if they exist. The toughest part of this work is the piece around advocacy. Is saying to a system or an institution, it doesn't work that way, based on ongoing ethnography, based on our lived experiences, based on the trends that we're seeing. So we're saying to these rigid systems, you have to change the way that you do business. And despite the fact that these systems, institutions, and levels of government, they have these obvious scathing rates of attrition, they'll still continue to do what they do, how they do, with the same attrition rate, because there's no level of accountability.
Yeah.
Right. So when YAAACE was structured, the objective was to pull young people from two sides of Finch and get them to coexist. You know, using sport as a conduit, providing academic support, providing wraparound support. It was just an idea. It was an idea predicated on, if we allow and if we leave these young people to their own device to do what they want, we know almost always what the outcome would be. Right? It was inevitable. Right? So it was designed to bridge that gap, get those young people to coexist, get them to see each others as peers, as colleagues, as community members, as opposed to as ops or an enemy or the other person that's on the other side of the tracks. So in structuring this initiative and acquiring the learnings from so many brilliant people, borrowing from them, it was important to us that we address the piece around attrition. It was important to us that we provide infrastructure around academics. That was a big piece. That we address the piece around reflective services and cultural consideration of care, and the big piece around advocacy. Like advocacy is such a critical piece, because you're trying to say to people, I can show you emails sent to folks just chronicling what's taking place, what will take place, non-responsive, or they tie up in those systemic bureaucracies that before you know it, that young person has expired, or they're buried knee deep in the justice system, right? So when we structured YAAACE, when we framed YAAACE, we wanted to address all those needs of young people.
The wraparound services.
The comprehensive wraparound in the context of prevention, and then in the context of prevention, and also we're more doing intervention work with Peace Corps, new narrative and towards peace, and with people like Tamasha on board that's true in that process. But it was really ensuring that we were deliberate in putting young people in a trajectory that would mitigate their involvement in the justice system.
Thank you. I want Tamasha to chime in, but I also don't know if you saw in the chat. You have an admirer who said, "Look at my mentor, beautiful Tamasha. You played a major role in my life. I believe in giving people their flowers while they're here, so I wanted you to see that and receive that from someone that was watching."
Beautiful. I can't see the chat at all, so whoever that is.
Yeah. But wraparound services being key, and what I heard loud and clear, Devon, is this notion of, while we're at the work of doing in service for youth, we still have to keep our finger on the pulse and voices loudly raised to advocate for resources. That it goes hand in hand, which is often what I tell my students. You got to do it all. You got to do it all things. But Tamasha, I didn't know if you had something to say.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I know Devon spoke a bit about what they do. And although new to YAAACE, I see YAAACE as functioning really as that conduit and a bridge for those who are disproportionately impacted, but still remain invisible when it comes to homicide and community. So although they're supporting families and there's the advocacy in schools by taking on projects and initiatives such as the ones he mentioned, so New Narrative, that has a family support component to it. And then Towards Peace, that's using that wraparound approach with the youth, their families and community. You're better supporting them and connecting them to a myriad of resources that one entity just can't provide. I know a lot of folks out there will say that, yes, they can cure the violence, they can stop the violence, they'll be there for the parents, but it's not going to be done by one. Hence all of these different partnerships and these emails and things that Devon is saying that are being sent out. I believe YAAACE is a organization for the people by the people. It's community. The majority of staff there are folks that live in these spaces. So they understand and they feel what it is that these young people are feeling. So when they grieve, we are also grieving with them. And I think that's important when it comes to really being able to wrap yourself around folks. If they don't know you, the connection is not there. So being someone who's in community, so myself, I'm very well in community, but in speaking of YAAACE, Devon has been in community. So when something happens, you know, their crisis becomes our crisis. It becomes our loss of life. And if we think about, even when it comes to the schools, I know this is really around like educators and that sort of thing. It's been too often that there is a death that takes place. We know that death is a part of life. It's not always in the way that we hope it would be. But when it does happen, it's still beyond me that teachers and educators are coming in ill-equipped to deal with something that is, it's a part of life. So teachers are still not understanding principles, are still not understanding the psychological or the physical symptoms that this grief and trauma is having on these students. And when the child, you know, they start to display, whether it's regression or inattention, or they lash out because their friend was just shot in the street.
And they just,
it's misdiagnosed as a learning disability. And it becomes a problem. And then we have expulsions and, you know, like suspensions. And these kids are now said, hey, maybe you need this IEP that follows you all along, but the support you have never received. And we're understanding that this unaddressed trauma continues to follow these youth throughout their elementary to high school to college to we are not giving them. And if we are talking about a youth ecosystem, a school is a part of that. So I'm at a point where, listen, they have a right to be protected in these spaces.
Yeah.
So our educators, our principals, our superintendents, anybody attached to a school board and community needs to wrap themselves around these youth. So we're not dealing with this cycle over and over and over again.
What you're seeing is not aggression or attention deficit disorder. You're seeing grief, chronic traumatic grief. I couldn't have said it better. And it's actually one of the reasons why we are in the process of developing the post-homicide training certificate program. Exactly that, to help service providers, educators, EMTs know what it looks like, so that we're not misdiagnosing and then also mistreating folks, for sure. I want to pick up on, though, what you both said in your response, which is key. And I think it's important to kind of end here when we talk about from the front lines. The work that you're doing in service to others, calling, my calling as I call it, but how it impacts you. And so when we think about what it takes to provide services to children and youth impacted by chronic exposure to cumulative Black death, let's just say it plain, how do their experiences impact you as a frontline educator and community consultant and leaders? And where do you go for support, and what do you still need to keep going?
Ouch. He's got that one.
Sorry.
He'll start that one.
I just
no. I say ouch because the questions like that really hit me deeply. Only because, again, you know, most folks who know me knows that I too am a survivor of homicide, and sometimes, you know, you don't know what you need. But I think what I continue to say to people is that in this sort of work where it's not just hard work, it's heart work, that healthcare is absolutely critical.
Yes.
And that there's no shame in being able to say, you know, let me step away for a second because I need to disconnect in order for me to connect. And I've needed to do that. I've needed to also put down and unfortunately, I think it's something that has served as a disadvantage for us in our communities, but putting down that sort of strong Black woman stereotype and allowing myself to feel what the grief is. You know, it's always, I need to be strong for somebody else. I need to, because if I'm not, then who is? You know, I'll be able to break in the comforts of my own home and not in front of people. But again, for me, who feels that I am a spirit just having this human experience, I need to have this experience. And that tough exterior sometimes showing your vulnerability is what makes you tough. So I strongly believe in like radical self-care, where it's like, listen, my wellness comes before all else because I can't help you if I'm not well. So who do I go to? The Most High most times. I go to the water. I go to family. I go to nature is very important. It becomes my best friend when I need to ground and release. So yeah, and just really a reliance on ancestors and people around me to continue to hold me and bring me where I need to be.
Thank you for that. I think I needed to hear that this evening. So thank you so much, Brother Devon.
Yeah, the piece around self-care is absolutely important, and oftentimes, you know, so many of us doing this work, we neglect self, we neglect family, you know, to a fault, and you know, it's based on, for example, I haven't been in a classroom for about 2 years, but I'm in a classroom for a little bit until I transition. But I look at the young men in my grade 6 class, just the students in my grade 6 classroom. post-COVID, just the huge disparity in achievement. You can see the effect of COVID, not being in school for almost 2 years. These young people are so far behind where they're supposed to be. You're seeing some of the behaviors. And for me at times, you come across a young person that reminds you of another young person that you've lost. And the sense of urgency, it's triggering, to say the least. It's triggering because it's like you've seen this movie before, you've seen the show before, and you're trying to prevent that from happening because you're seeing the same set of values, the same compromise situation, the same dynamics, and inevitably what the outcome's going to be, and it's in a sense triggering. For me, those young people just always push you to be more, to want to do more, and at times, like you want to at times walk away from it, or at times you just want to say, especially when you deal with systems. The young people I can deal with. The systems, that's my thing, man. Just the apathy. It's really and truly, it's disturbing, to say the least. And I think, yes, I think that has to be the crux of the work, is holding these people accountable and highlighting their inadequacies.
Yeah.
Because they're getting a pass on the death of these children. So that, I know, for me, that really pushes me, and seeing a child who what the outcome is, and despite your best effort, it might not be what it's supposed to be. You might not get the result that you desire. To me, that really pushes. And yes, to the point, regardless, you have to take care of yourself, because when you drop, no one's gonna do this work. Or when you drop, you drop. So, I've seen so many great people in community who, early death or illness, just based on all this that they've taken on, right?
Yeah. I tell you, I'm looking at the time, but also wanting to talk to you all more. But I know we'll have an opportunity, because we've got some things in the pipeline that are very exciting, Crip community, that we hope we can talk to you about very soon. But I wanna end with this important note, because again, both of you uplifted it into the conversation in very different ways. What you said, Devon, was change the way we do business. Change the way we do business. And I'm just wondering, in like, because we're 5 minutes over, so like give me 30 seconds of your like pakaya, like the mic dropping. Yeah, right. That if we think about the title of the season being From the Front Lines, how might researchers, thinking about changing the way we do business, how might researchers, policymakers, and practitioners best support frontline workers such as yourselves, who are working with those disproportionately impacted by homicide? What is the call to action for researchers, policymakers, and practitioners?
Yeah, definitely. The piece
30 seconds now. Bring me home. Bring me home.
The piece around, disaggregating the data to hold folks accountable. Because if we can't speak tangibly to the attrition that's taking place as researchers, then policymakers, bureaucracies, institutions, they're going to always operate the way that they operate. So if we can't say, since Jordan Manners, there's been 400 homicide of school-age kids, and there has been, right? Let's talk about who are those young people. Let's look at their demographic data. Like, let's make sense of who those young people are. Are they from single parents home? What postal codes are they from? So if we can speak tangibly and quantify and evaluate and assess and hold people accountable, it will give frontline workers like yourself the leverage to speak. So when we talk, we're not speaking hyperbole. Because that's that's the position, is that we're being hyperbole. No, we're not being hyperbole, right? It's to the opposite. So
It's lived experience. It's
yeah,
lived experience, but matching it with the data. Yeah.
yeah. So if we can create that traction of accountability based on the data, because the data is going to scaling to say the least, but not enough work has been done to look at these glaring attrition that has taken place over the past 2 decades in the city, and consequently, those institutions that's perpetrating these attrition, they're allowed to go scotch-free because no one is holding them accountable. So that's how I would do business differently: the analysis of data, the analysis of victims, of perpetrators, so we can better understand. Listen, you came through these systems, you navigated these systems, you sat in these classrooms. You made these policies that didn't really make sense. You continue to make such policies.
Thank you for that call to action, and we accept the challenge here at the crib. We accept that challenge, and I also want to shout out to you, Devon. Somebody in the chat said, "Look at you, young man, still pushing. Glad you haven't dropped." Laughing out loud, laughing out loud. All right. Tamasha, bring us home, says.
Okay. We're going to make sure he doesn't. I'm going to make it real quick, just using a couple of them A's that Devon has shouted out. But to support frontline workers, you are going to need to, your call to action, folks out there, is to bring awareness to these things. Let the invisible come to light. We are here. We are no longer invisible. Bring the awareness. Hold folks accountable, as well as advocate, and then take action. So those will be your 4 A's.
Wow.
And those are what you need to do.
I mean, crib community, I think we're off to a fascinating start. Invisible, make the invisible visible. That is your call to action, folks. Devon, Tamasha, I am so grateful for the work that you do. I am excited about continuing for us to get to know one another and work together, but just thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Tanya. Appreciate it.
And crib community, thank you so much for joining us for another launch of 30 at 8:30. Continue to chime in every Wednesday night at 8:30 for 30 minutes and some change like we did tonight. But as always, from our crib to yours, stay safe and keep well. Good night.
Ashay, good night.
Night.